Hello, so welcome to my presentation. This presentation is for the class at Alliant International University. So the class is School Safety, Violence Prevention, and Crisis Intervention. Welcome, my name is Mariana Herrera, and the topic that I chose for at-risk youth is gangs in the Latinx community. So welcome. So the main points that I'm gonna go through in this presentation are the following. Number one, it's very important to have a clear understanding of what gangs provide for people who decide to join them. So understand gangs from that perspective. Why are young people most vulnerable? Then I'm gonna go through the research and how can educators support students. So we need to have a conversation first about what gangs provide for young people. So this is not to glamorize or romanticize what a gang could give somebody young and impressionable, but rather to understand that perspective from a young person's mind. So the gangs provide a sense of belonging, becoming sort of like a substitute of the family. They give them an identity and sense of purpose, a false sense of independence. So I'm going to talk about the false sense of independence in the next slides, and a sense of security. The context is really important because things that happen in our environment can change a child's trajectory and the decisions that they make. So the educational system is not really designed for our community. I am a Latina myself. It is not really designed for our community and our necessities. I think that this is changing for the better, but it's kind of been like a slow pace evolution of really catering to our communities. I've been an educator for the last 6 years, and I can tell you, like, the school that I work for, of course, we make a lot of efforts to make our curriculum, interventions, and services that we provide culturally relevant and really serve our community. And I know that there's other schools that are, on the same page, but it really depends school by school. In general, the educational system is not really designed for our community to cater to what we need. Context also fractured homes with parents that want the best for their children, but that have to work to provide, and they're in a system that doesn't support them. So I do want to be careful that we are not talking from a deficit standpoint of like Latinx communities and families, because the parents of these children really do want the best for their kids, but they're more on the survival mode, right? I need to put food on the table. That's the first thing. We're surviving. And so we find ourselves in a system that doesn't really support us, in a capitalist society that's worried more about profit rather than education, healthcare, and all of these other necessities. So it's really important to view our communities as a lot of things are not being, we don't have those support systems in place. And structurally, it has become a vicious cycle where, being exploited in this type of economy is just the norm. And it seems that it is acceptable and normal when it shouldn't. We need to prioritize. And really, the educational system is designed for white middle-class Christian families. So we also need to look at it from that perspective as to all of these things, what gangs provide and the context in which the youth is coming from, and particularly in this community. So why are young people the most vulnerable? Well, at the end of the day, not only young people, but also, adults, children, everyone, we are social beings. We need to find spaces where we are accepted for who we are. They can, as I mentioned before, provide protection, respect, even enjoyment. They create an identity that gives them a sense of belonging. And as I mentioned before, a sense of independence. Now, this one is particularly interesting because gangs might seem like they give young people this sense of independence, but it ends up being the exact opposite. It's a life commitment. It's not a game. And even though it seems like you're gaining this respect, maybe some income or whatever it is that the gang is providing for you, protection, you're not independent at all. You have to stay loyal to your gang, and leaving a gang can be life-threatening situation for the person or their loved ones. You know, there are nonprofit organizations that really support ex-gang members, like the Homeboy and Homegirl Industries in Los Angeles with Father Boyle, that they do amazing work with people that got out of the prison system. A lot of them had joined gangs and now they're trying to rebuild their life. And, you know, they help them with providing all these services and helping them find a job within Homeboy Industries. They have a beautiful, wonderful bakery. If you're ever in the area, I definitely recommend Homeboy and Homegirls Industries. So they do really change people's lives, but that sense of independence is completely false. But you know, they get that this is what they're going to get, but in reality, it's the opposite. I chose this quote because it's hard to read in the sense of it's very dense, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. And I think it has to do a lot with why youth goes into gangs. The true group of the individual is thus the aggregate of a persons likely to suffer the same shortcomings as him, for having the same stigma. His true group is, in reality, the category that can serve to discredit him. If he approaches his group, he is loyal and authentic. If he walks away, he's a fool and a coward. The stigmatized individual must be loyal to his group. So this is a true sentiment of the situation. Like, a lot of times these young people are also stigmatized and they're not accepted in the community, and they go into an educational institution where they feel like you are not catering for me and my needs, and I don't feel like I have a sense of belonging. I'm going to look for that sense of belonging elsewhere. So that's really important. Environment. So I used a lot of, for the research portion of this presentation, I base it mostly on Huertas and Rio's work, which is pretty recent. And they talk about the environmental factors that can change a life's trajectory and how they navigate the school system as a result. So they really dive into not only the school systems in the United States, but also the outside world that the students and young people have to confront the realities. And they also dive into a little bit in terms of like the relationship between law enforcement and Latinos and Latino students, which is super interesting, and how this relationship is completely fractured. And it's always been from the get-go very unhealthy, right? Because of how this nation was built. And so they did amazing work with their research. And I really like this, you know, the environmental factors can change a life of a child's trajectory, because at the end of the day, the youth that is joining gangs, you know, on this level where they're still going to school, at the end of the day, they're children. We don't view them as children. And when they end up getting in trouble, they're judged as adults. But at the end of the day, they're children. Their brain is not fully developed. And this is something that we studied in the school psychology, right? The frontal lobe, whereas the emotional intelligence develops, is not fully developed until, you know, when the person is 20 something years old. They say 25-year-olds, other researchers say even later. So at the end of the day, they're children, and their environment will impact them. So what does the research tell us? Like, again, context is really important. School funding is a great factor for children also joining gangs, because we know that underfunded schools are less successful with interventions to really support students and stop them from, you know, joining these circles. There's a lack of representation and diversity within the school system. Students need to see people that look like them up in a position as a teacher, as the custodian, as a principal, as a school nurse, as a school psychologist. We need to see this diversity. And my parrot agrees. She's right here with me. So that's really important. There's a lack of representation. We really need to support our Latino youth into joining the workforce as educators to really represent, okay, this is something that we want to change. So we need to have better representation of our own community as leaders. And I take it from the custodian to the principal to the school psych, whatever participant, right? Because those are good examples, you know, of what we want to see, like what we want to see represented. So as part of the school community. there's a school culture deficit model of thinking from the institutional standpoint as well. And this could be very damaging, right? When we tell students, oh, you'll never amount to anything, or you're not going to make that happen, or it happens within our school walls. And this is something, and this is why culturally relevant practices have to be deeply embedded within the school culture. So we stop thinking like, you know, school culture deficit model of thinking towards the Latinx community, because that's not okay and it needs to stop. And of course, poverty has a big influence as well. So furthermore, what are the solutions to this problem? Research has shown that sports, artistic activities as forms of intervention to support at-risk youth has proven to work. But to have these sports and artistic activities, we're going back to what's going on with our school funding. Who's going to teach these classes, and how are we going to present this information? You see, all of these factors. So, you know, this is nice and dandy, but to make it happen, we need, you know, the information from the other slide. Culturally relevant and engaging curriculum. You know, as the philosopher and educator Paulo Freire, who's from Brazil, said, we need to really teach students from a standpoint where they identify with these lessons, where they can engage. It's like if you're teaching in the country and you're teaching the country students about the city. And yes, of course, they should learn about the city and about other environments that they're completely disconnected from. But at the same time, you need to start teaching them from a standpoint of what are you connecting to? And then we can talk, look, there's a different type of life, and it's a city, and there's this, and this is how the cities are structured, and it's so different. But we do need to engage the student in culturally relevant and engaging curriculum in order to get them motivated to learn, right? Because as adults, we want to know why we're learning, how am I going to use this, how am I going to apply this? I've spoken to so many students who are like, this math stuff, you know, I'm never going to apply this, I don't know why I'm learning. And it just so happens that this student loves to play the guitar. It's like you're using math every single day, you just don't realize it. So we need to apply your passion and love for music into this math class, and I guarantee you're going to engage more, and it works. And I've seen it as a teacher. Like you work on math all day. It's just that we're not bridging these things, and we need to build bridges. Support students, like I said, making connections with everyday life, implement this curriculum and ways of tracking progress of the students to really see what's working and what isn't. And we need to provide PDs, so professional development opportunities for teachers, with what is working and what isn't, to adjust accordingly. And when I talk about this, I'm not only talking about the academic content in our lessons, but also like we need to have PDs that revolve around trauma-informed practices and how to work with a student who has suffered from trauma or has severe anxiety. And all of these things, research has shown that it rewires the brain. How am I going to cater to your needs so you feel safe, so you feel welcome, so you feel like you're learning something that actually matters to you, that you're going to use in the future? How am I going to build those connections? So professional development opportunities a lot of times revolve around a lot of the academic portion of it, which is very relevant and important, so don't get me wrong, but also like we need to have PDs that revolve around the social emotional well-being of our students, because a student that is developing in a healthy way their emotional intelligence will succeed in other areas, and that has been proven. So we need to provide those opportunities, and then create this sense of community, train the teachers. You know, a lot of teachers, they really do try their best, but they're not being set up for success in their schools. Provide them with the opportunity for them to give on their own ideas on how they can be creative, but also help train them. You know, I've met teachers that are like, I really want to help the student, but I really do not know how. And they don't get those instructional consultations. They don't get that PD time. They don't get that planning time that they need. So we really do need to set up our teachers for success, because just like the parents, the teachers also want the best for their students, and they're coming from a place of love. You know, people go into this profession because they want to help others, they want to teach, they want to be part of young people's lives and change them for the better. And then also support the parents as a community. Again, we are not looking at this from a deficit standpoint of, oh, the Latino community. No, There's a clear, deeply embedded structural issue that we need to address. The parents want the best for their children. They want them to succeed. They want them to make good decisions. They want them to achieve their goals, whatever those might be. But we need to support the parents. So these are the two structures in community that we need to really help, right? Our teachers and our parents, we're all one. And that's why I really love this image, because we're all in it together. And at the end of the day, these two groups, they want the best for the students. They only want the best for their students and the children. So these are my sources. Most of the research that I shared is Huerta and Rios, but Walsh really talks about the solutions on how to support and how research has proven that sports and artistic activities really help them, keep the students in a safe space where they're not making these decisions of joining gangs because of what we spoke about, what gangs have to offer. And again, it's not to say that joining a gang is a good thing, but they do offer certain things that the students are looking for. This false sense of independence, identity, a substitute family, a sense of belonging. So these are the references. And well, I hope that you enjoy the presentation. And thank you so much for sticking and listening to it. And I'll see you soon. So thank you so much. Bye.